Hey, Worldwide TV, we are back with our Destination Auburn series. And let me tell you, today's episode is all about the past meeting the future. And I cannot wait to dive into this. I am your host, Kayla Blakesley, alongside my co-host, John Cruz, owner and auctioneer here at Worldwide Auctioneers. And John, rumor has it you might know today's guest pretty well.
Senator Dennis Cruz is my father. Hi, Dad.
Hello.
But Senator, I also heard rumor that somehow John has managed to kind of pull you a little bit out of early retirement to help out with Destination Auburn.
Yes, I'm finishing up my Senate term on November the 8th this year. And so I'm not quite as busy as I was if I'd be running for election, which if my office is up for re-election this year. So I had a little extra time, and John has hired me now to work for him part-time. So I've been out of the collector car auction business for quite a while now. So it's interesting for me and good for me, I think, to get back in the business a little bit.
Yeah, what's going to kind of be your role over the next couple of days or a couple of months?
I'm in the what you would call the administration part of it, and to be an overseer to make sure everything's going like it's supposed to go, that people are doing the jobs they're supposed to do, and talk to the public and see if there's any problems and try to be a problem solver. Because when you're in the auction business, things happen bang, 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 and you got to do things on a timely basis. So if somebody is unsatisfied or something, somebody needs to deal with it as quick as possible.
So lucky you get to be that somebody, huh?
Yeah.
Well, as I said, today's episode is really all about the past meeting the future. And I'm just so anxious to chit chat with you a little bit about the history and the origin of what is now come to be known as Destination Auburn, because as folks my age refer to it as an OG, the original gangster, you are kind of one of the OGs of this being what it is today. So do you mind walking us through the history of this, you know, from the club to the auction to the museums to now the festival?
Yes, so 1971 is when we had our first auction, and the reason we had it is because the Auburn Chamber of Commerce was hosting the ACD Club every year from 1954 up through 71. And it got so that it was costing them money every year to host them, and it got up to about $3,000 a year. And so they came to us and said, you know, would you guys have a fundraising auction, a benefit auction, and try to raise $3,000 to local merchants donating items and stuff, so you could raise $3,000 to offset this expense, so Auburn Chamber of Commerce, you know, wouldn't struggle in trying to pay those bills. And so we agreed to do that. And so after we made that agreement, my dad had the idea that, you know, maybe we could sell cars, you know, ACD cars and other old cars to raise the money. Instead of having a fundraising auction, we could have a regular auction. And up until that time, as far as we know, no one ever charged admission to any public auction in American history. And so we decided we would charge $1 admission to try to raise that $3,000 through the admission fees for our first auction in 1971 on Labor Day weekend. And as it turned out, we raised $8,000.
Wow.
So the Auburn Chamber got $8,000 instead of $3,000. So they were.
You're all like celebrating.
Yeah, we were. They were celebrating, and we had the auction went pretty good, and we had ABC, or I think it was ABC Network, one of the national networks, came out and filmed that auction. And the story title they gave, which went all over the world the next day, was "Two Fools Met in Auburn, Indiana Today." One fool actually offered $55,000 for a used car. The other fool turned it down and wouldn't sell it for $55,000. So that went all over the world.
I'm looking that up.
Yeah, so people got interested in that, and we had calls from different places around the United States, and so we ended up having 4 auctions the next year and 8 and 10 auctions.
No, wait a minute. I need you to pause for a second. So you said your dad had this idea to charge $1 for admission. So when it's all said and done, you raised $8,000, which blew that $3,000 goal just out of the water. I mean, did you sit down at the dinner table and just kind of revel in that for a moment? I mean, can you remember that feeling and like, Dad, you're a genius? I mean, talk me through that.
We probably had 15,000 people come. We had a single rope with fence posts around our tent area where the cars were parked, and you know, half the people just walked over the rope. They didn't go through the gate to pay the $1. So we could have got more, but we did relish in the $8,000. It was pretty good.
Have you heard all these stories before?
I have, and I think as a lot of our viewers have watched the series, and you know, the community is a common thread with all these groups. And so, you know, going back to my grandfather and my father and my uncle also at the time, that the entire creation of America's longest running collector car auction destination was to help the community. And I think that is really important, because that's not just what that sentiment was then. It's my sentiment today in 2022, because this is such a great, special place. And I think one reason, not just why I want to do it, but I want to do it because I know everybody either will love coming back, or for the thousands of car fans around the country who've never been here, there's nothing else like it. And that's a big reason.
They can come and it's going to feel like home for them too. Destination Auburn is all about getting it back to being local. But I am curious, Senator, because you said, your father had this idea, it was back in the 70s. Is that what got you into the car world initially? Was your dad?
Yes, so we had a great business. My dad started in 1952 in the auction business, and so we had a really good auction business going with my two brothers and myself, three brothers and our dad. So we'd have hundreds of auctions a year. One month we had 33 auctions in 30 days.
Wow.
So we had a profitable, good business going, and then we had this thing happen where we had this collector car auction. Just by happenstance in a way, my dad just thought of this idea, and ended up we got to where we had 40, some years 44 auctions every weekend out of 52 weeks a year. We were having collector car auctions all over the United States and Canada, and we created what today is a $2 billion a year business in a collector car auction business. We started it.
That is wild to me. So this has been going on for a little over 50 years now. Did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams, as we're moving into Destination Auburn, it's just upon us, this is what it would be now, between the parade and the cruise-in and the Auburn Court-Duesenberg Festival? I mean, did you just in your wildest dreams ever imagine it being this?
No, not at all. My dad's dream was to have, I'm one of 5 sons, so his dream was to have the 5 boys be a farmer. He was a dairy farmer. He wanted us to all be farmers with him, was his dream. So it was different. 3 of us ended up working with him in the auction business. But my dad fulfilled his dream in a different way. But he was very satisfied with what happened and what occurred. And once we got it going, then we had an auction for Marshall Clothing Company, which incidentally they offered me to be president of Marshall Clothing Company, and they were using the museum building to manufacture clothing, and they ended up going bankrupt. And so we actually contracted with them and actually had the auction of selling all their belongings that they had left in the bankruptcy. We sold at public auction. So we were there when the Marshall Clothing Company went bankrupt, and the museum then sat empty then after that. And so we were a part of putting together the group to actually buy the museum building. Actually, it wasn't a museum, that was just a factory building, and put together the purchase of that. And then when the museum was created soon after that, and we gave money to that from the very beginning, and gave money every year for quite a few years. And the last I kept track, for sure we gave over $2 million, and it could have approached by the end maybe more like $3 million that Cruz family gave the museum itself.
Just the museum? Just
the museum, to keep the museum going.
Wow.
So we put a lot of money into it, and kept it going and kept it alive, and it ended up doing better and better and better and thriving, and got more people interested in it. And so it's really become one of the finest car museums in the world today. So we're very thankful for that.
Are you proud Papa, to see this guy kind of taking the reins and starting to take over?
Very much so. So it's good for the Cruz family. We started it, and somebody in our family has been involved in it the whole time. We've had different ones in our family, but it's good, very nice. I'm very thankful that John's in that business today and carrying on that family tradition. So we appreciate it very much. And now I'm working for him instead of he working for me.
Did you ever think that would happen?
Well, I don't think about it quite that way. As he was describing his duties now in administration and making sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to, I was thinking, welcome to my world my whole life, which is great. It's a wonderful life. And hearing about the museum. I had the honor to be a trustee at the museum for a few years, and I think it's without question the most historically significant automobile museum in the world. And if it was not for this community, if it wasn't for Dad and some other key folks, we wouldn't have that to build around, and the town probably wouldn't have been able to afford to keep doing that. So it's, as Mike Boswell, the president of the festival, shared in one of our earlier segments, we've got that community foundation and those pillars that really just work so well together. And I think that a lot of car events are cars first and people second. And I think Auburn is unique in that we're people first and cars second. And everybody appreciates the experiences that we have with those cars, but it's a famous car town. But it's the people that make it special.
And like you've been talking about all along through the series too, it's all about that experience. This is your quintessential Midwestern town. You get to come and feel it and breathe it and take it all in with community first, cars second. But I do want to ask you, Senator, because you've kind of been around these now for a while, over 50 years.
Yep.
If you had to pick maybe your favorite memory, what would it be throughout the last 50 years?
Well, to have our auction grow, we had 2,000 cars in our auction at the peak, and that was, it was hard work to put it all together, but at the same time, it was a joy to see how the hobby grew and how people got interested in cars. I remember that first car that bid $55,000 was a Duesenberg car, and I remember it might have been '72. We sold a Duesenberg for $100,000. I actually sold one.
Wow.
Norm Weezy bought it, and Norm Weezy sold it. Charlie Woods bought it from New York, and so my dad made the prediction that day. He said, "I believe that someday we'll sell a car for $1 million." And people laughed at him when he said that at the auction. And then it wasn't several years later we actually did sell a car.
Yeah, who's
for $1 million.
laughing now, right?
And now, you sell quite a few cars have been selling for over $1 million. But I think art was high-priced items. And when I looked at these cars when we first started doing this, and I thought, man, I think I'd rather have this car than a paintings on the wall that you can't do anything with. You look at
Absolutely.
it, but here you can get in your car, you can drive it out, have fun with your family and friends, and really enjoy this piece of art. And so I think when people got aware of that, more and more people bid on cars, and the prices went up. And so now we have really a lot of cars sell for high prices today, and I think it's a worthy investment for people too.
Senator and John, I can put this to you too, but for someone maybe watching right now, if they've never been here, or maybe it's been 5-10 years, and like, I've already been to Auburn before. I don't need to go back. Yeah. Why would you tell them they have to come back?
Well, Auburn is a place where we actually produce like 17 different cars.
John just taught me that.
in Auburn, and so until Henry Ford started the assembly line on the Model T, Auburn was just as significant as Detroit in making cars, and Indianapolis was too. In fact, in Indiana, we had like over 100 different car manufacturers in the state of Indiana. And so we really had that heritage here in Auburn on cars, and having the Auburn Automobile Company here, and they ended up creating the Cord car. Then they bought the Duesenberg Company from Fred and August Duesenberg in Indianapolis. They became a pretty significant car manufacturer, and to have the manufacturing company went bankrupt, I think, in 1937. I think that's about the year. And so from then until when they started coming back in '54, the owners of the Auburn Cord Duesenberg cars had hard time finding parts and finding out how to deal with servicing the cars and finding, an alternator that would fit and work and stuff. And so one of the guys, Mr. Winslow, actually had the museum property, which would have been the manufacturing building. He actually had parts in there for a long time, for I don't know how long, 20 years or so. And so he actually collected all the leftover parts from the Auburn Automobile Company, then he would sell those to these guys. But they started coming together, and in the reunion, they call it the ACD Club reunion, and they did it to share ideas with each other's cars and what'd you do to your car, how did you fix this, and what'd you do, how'd you handle overheating, and those kind of things. So that I think was a beneficial club to get started, and we're kind of the granddaddy of collector car auctions. In fact, I would say that the Cruz family innovated collector car auctions in the world today, which didn't exist when we started in 1971. I mean, there had only been a handful of collector car auctions ever held, only one at a time, maybe just a handful of them prior to that. So we established that in Auburn. I would say coming back to Auburn, you have the manufacturing heritage, you got the club meeting here, you got the beginning of collector car auctions as we know them today. So I think this would be, a good place to come. It's a nice community. The downtown now around it, we have the traditional courthouse square, and we shut that
It's
down.
beautiful.
In fact, the State Highway Department doesn't like shutting down State Road 8 during that, but we've been doing it so long that they still keep that tradition. But today they probably wouldn't allow us to close down State Road 8. But it's just a fun time, enjoyable time, and you get to see people once a year. It's actually a reunion, of a lot of people. They come and see each other just once a year here in Auburn. So I think people should come back to Auburn and enjoy what we've been able to enjoy for 50-some years.
What about you, John, for someone teetering like, I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure?
Well, I go to all kinds of Concours events and car shows and other different club events, and obviously a lot of auctions. And there is a magical spark in Auburn that doesn't exist anywhere else. And I'm from here, I live here, and I love it, but you either feel that or you don't. And there's a lot of great events, but there's something special, and all the things we've all talked about, but that's the foundation, and that's what we have had here. And last year we really felt that spark at our auction. And one huge reason why we chose to expand, and now that the club folks are starting to come back into town, I mean, still got a few days by the time you're watching this, but we still already have these folks coming into town, and the cars are coming back, and there's already a magical buzz, and we're not even to the auction yet.
That's so true. I remember my first time going to the Auburn Cord-Duesenberg Festival, and I had kind of a beer in one hand, my husband in the other, and we're just walking around looking at some of the cars. And I thought, man, I can't believe this is in my backyard, because I live about 20, 30 minutes south of Auburn. But I was like, why have I never been here before? Why have I not done this before? And I'm more of a history buff. I appreciate the history and the nostalgia. But you're right, magic is the perfect word to sum it up. And I think that's a good place to end, John. So if you want to learn more about all of the events and everything we're going to be featuring during Destination Auburn, you can log online to destinationauburn.com. Plus, you can also purchase your tickets for the expanded 3-day auction hosted by Worldwide Auctioneers right there at destinationauburn.com.